Have you ever wondered why nations wage war against each other despite the devastation it brings? War, in all its cruel splendor, has been a constant companion of human civilization. It is a paradoxical phenomenon, simultaneously showcasing the best and worst of humanity. It's a dance of death and destruction, a symphony of sorrow and sacrifice. But why do we engage in it? Why do we as a species continue to perpetuate this cycle of violence and conflict? Many scholars and thinkers have pondered this question, and yet a definitive answer eludes us. Some attribute it to our inherent aggression, a primal instinct passed down from our caveman ancestors. This aggression, they argue, is heightened by territorial disputes, a battle for space, if you will, that often escalates into full-blown warfare. Others point to resources as the root cause. In a world of finite resources, the fight for control over these precious commodities is inevitable. Whether it's oil, water, minerals, or even human resources, the struggle to secure these essentials can and often does lead to conflict. But perhaps the most pervasive and potent reason for war is ideology. The belief in a particular way of life, a specific worldview, can become a powerful motivator for conflict. It's the ideological differences, the clash of values and principles that often ignite the flames of war. The impact of these wars on societies, on individuals, is immeasurable. Lives are lost, families torn apart, communities destroyed. The physical destruction is often accompanied by psychological trauma, the scars of which can last generations. And yet, despite the devastation, despite the loss, we continue to wage war. It's a testament to our resilience, perhaps, or maybe a sad reflection of our inability to learn from our past mistakes. A prime example of this destructive cycle is the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. The Israel-Hamas war did not spark overnight. Its roots lie deep in the annals of history. To truly grasp the genesis of the Israel-Hamas conflict, we must journey back to the early 20th century. This was a time when tensions between Palestinian Arabs and Jewish immigrants were starting to simmer in the British Mandate of Palestine. The formation of Israel in 1948 further fueled these tensions as both groups laid claim to the same land. Over the years, these tensions spiraled into a series of wars and conflicts, shaping the region's history and politics. In the midst of this turmoil, Hamas was born in 1987. Emerging as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas was seen by many Palestinians as a resistance movement against Israeli occupation. Its charter called for the destruction of Israel and the establishment of an Islamic State in Palestine. The initial years of the Israel-Hamas conflict were characterized by a cycle of violence. Hamas launched suicide bombings and rocket attacks against Israel, provoking harsh responses from the Israeli military. The situation was further complicated by the Palestinian Authority's struggle for control over the Gaza Strip with Hamas. The key event that escalated tensions was the Second Intifada, a Palestinian uprising against Israel that lasted from 2000 to 2005. This period saw an increase in suicide bombings and a hardening of positions on both sides. Around the same time, Hamas's political wing won a majority in the 2006 Palestinian legislative elections, further complicating the political landscape. The situation reached a boiling point with the blockade of Gaza by Israel in 2007, an action justified by Israel as a means to stop Hamas from obtaining weapons. However, this blockade has also led to a humanitarian crisis with shortages of essential supplies and services. Thus, the stage was set for a conflict that shows no signs of ending. As tensions escalated, the cost of this conflict became increasingly evident. The Israel-Hamas war, like any other, carries a heavy price, paid not in gold but in the currency of human life and suffering. The mounting tensions between the two factions exploded into a full-blown war, each side launching major attacks in a desperate bid for victory. But in the grim theater of war, there are no real victors, only survivors. Every strike, every counter-strike left a trail of devastation in its wake, both in physical damage and human lives. On the Israeli side, over 1,400 souls were lost to the conflict, with a further 3,400 nursing injuries of varying degrees. Each one, a person with dreams and ambitions, reduced to a mere statistic in the annals of this war. But the toll was even higher in Gaza. The Israeli counterstrikes resulted in 2,778 deaths and a staggering 9,938 injuries. The densely populated region became an epicenter of suffering, the air filled with the cries of the wounded and the wails of those who lost their loved ones. Beyond the immediate loss of life and injuries, the war created a humanitarian crisis of immense proportions in Gaza. The infrastructure was decimated, leaving the residents struggling for basic necessities like food, water, and medical supplies. The war did not discriminate between soldier and civilian, adult and child. It left deep scars on the land and its people, the echoes of which will be heard for generations to come. Such is the tragic toll of this ongoing conflict. As the world watches, one can't help but wonder, when will we ever learn? While the world watches, attempts at resolution have been many and varied. The international community has not been silent in the face of the Israel-Hamas conflict. Nations, coalitions, and organizations have stepped up, advocating for peace, proposing ceasefires, and engaging in diplomatic dialogues. The United Nations, for instance, has been at the forefront, attempting to mediate peace talks and enforcing resolutions aimed at mitigating the conflict. Yet these efforts have been met with varying degrees of success, often waning in the face of renewed hostilities. One notable intervention came from the President of the United States, Joe Biden. In a bid to reaffirm America's support for Israel, he made a significant journey to the war-torn region. His visit was not just a political statement, but also a tangible effort to address the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza. Discussions with Israeli officials, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, Jordan's King Abdullah, and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi were held, shedding light on the complexities of the conflict. But the path to resolution has been far from straightforward. Despite numerous ceasefires proposed and even implemented, they've often been short-lived. As seen with the AI chatbot's confusion, even the information surrounding these ceasefires can be inconsistent and unreliable. It's a stark reminder of how volatile the situation remains. And so, the world continues to grapple with this crisis. International powers, local leaders, and even artificial intelligence strive to make sense of the situation, to find a path that leads away from violence and towards peace. Yet despite these efforts, a sustainable resolution remains elusive. In the face of such relentless conflict, one can't help but ponder on the true nature of war and peace. War, as we've seen in the Israel-Hamas conflict, is not just a series of battles, but a complex web of socio-political issues, historical grievances, and human suffering. It's a tragic testament to our failure to resolve differences peacefully, and a stark reminder of the high price we pay for such failures. Yet, amidst the cacophony of violence, the concept of peace emerges as a beacon of hope. Peace, however, is not simply the absence of war. It's a state of harmony, a reflection of our ability to coexist, to understand and respect our differences. It's a testament to our capacity for empathy, compassion, and mutual respect. Achieving peace is not easy. It's a journey fraught with obstacles. It requires diplomacy, negotiation, and a deep understanding of the complexities that fuel conflicts. It demands that we look beyond our narrow perspectives and strive to understand the broader narrative. It calls for courage, patience, and an unwavering commitment to justice and fairness. In the Israel-Hamas conflict, the road to peace seems particularly challenging. It's a conflict deeply rooted in history, marred by mistrust and animosity. Yet it's precisely in such challenging circumstances that the pursuit of peace becomes even more important. The role of diplomacy cannot be understated in this context. Diplomatic efforts, while often slow and frustrating, hold the potential to bridge divides, to diffuse tensions, and to pave the way for dialogue and negotiation. They offer a platform for voices to be heard, grievances to be addressed, and common ground to be found. In the end, our understanding of war and peace is shaped not just by the conflicts we witness, but also by our response to them. Do we succumb to the cycle of violence, or do we rise above it, seeking solutions that are just, fair, and sustainable? As we contemplate the Israel-Hamas war, we are reminded of the urgent need for peace and the daunting challenges that stand in its way. If you like this video, don't forget to show some love by like and subscribe. Until next time.